This morning, can Louis Gohmert defeat Ken Paxton? Gohmert is considering a run for Attorney General, but why does he want to leave Congress? And how grave of a threat could Gohmert pose to Paxton? A Texas senator is going to a Travis County court this week asking judges there to throw out the state's newly drawn districts until the legislature can meet again. Millions in equipment and supplies for Donald Trump's border wall still sit in South Texas right now. Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne wants to give it all over to the state rather than let it go to waste. In Houston, Democrats just carved up brand new districts for the county commission, and Republicans there are the ones calling it a power grab. Republican Commissioner Jack Cagle on how far he intends to take this fight.
Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley starts now.
Good Sunday morning to our viewers across the state as we go inside Texas politics this Sunday. Let's begin this week with the top political headlines here in Texas. We're expecting an announcement about Beto O'Rourke's political future any day now. Beto's Political Action Committee, called Powered by People, tweeted this the other day saying, "Big announcement coming soon and we want you to be part of it. Add your name and make sure you are the first to know what Beto is planning." The former congressman is considering a run for governor against Greg Abbott, and polls show it could be a competitive race. We are also watching what happens in the Republican race for Texas Attorney General. Congressman Louis Gohmert said that he would challenge Ken Paxton if Gohmert can raise $1 million over the next 10 days. Insiders tell me that Gohmert could become a serious threat to Paxton because they share the same Trump base, and Gohmert is well known statewide among Texas Republicans. George P. Bush, Eva Guzman, and Matt Krause are already in the race. And tomorrow, President Biden will sign the infrastructure bill into law. It's $1.2 trillion. Texas will get more than $35 billion of it, most going to interstate highways. But there's also money to replace lead pipes in drinking water systems, creating an electric vehicle charging network, and expanding broadband to rural areas. Let's begin with that bill signing tomorrow, though, at the White House. Infrastructure is usually bipartisan. President Trump tried to pass a $1 trillion plan as well. Democrats did not like that one. It took a while, but President Biden finally got his $1 trillion plan through, and Republicans don't like it. That's where our interview begins with Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne, a Republican who represents a big chunk of North Texas between Dallas and Fort Worth. Congresswoman, welcome back to the program. It's good to see you again. I want to ask you about the infrastructure bill that passed. It will be signed into law tomorrow by President Biden. It was standalone from the Build Back Better Act. It was drastically whittled down from the original proposal by the administration. But you opposed it. Still, your district, including places like DFW Airport, will really benefit from this, though, right?
Well, I would hope so. I mean, I did support the Republicans' bill, which was $400 billion for infrastructure, which the focus would have been on traditional infrastructure, bridges, roads, the airport, broadband, water. This bill, only 25% of it was those things. The amount of money, the amount of debt, the amount of regulations that we're adding without an ability to be able to pay it back was one of the reasons I was very concerned about it. We got pushed out of the whole negotiation on this bill. I fought to get on transportation and infrastructure because after having my experience as city council, mayor, working with regional leaders in the transportation field, I understood what we needed in this bill. And unfortunately, we were completely pushed out. Republicans had 200 amendments that during the markup and transportation committee, we actually tried to get pushed through. None of them were accepted.
Let's talk briefly about the border. After the Trump administration, after President Trump lost, the federal government still has $100 million worth of equipment and supplies sitting on the Texas border that it had planned to use to extend the border fence down there. You authored a bill to give all that stuff to Texas. My question, though, is Texas doesn't have the land to actually extend the border fence, even though, Governor Abbott and Don Huffines, who's running against Governor Abbott, both want to do that. So if let's say this passed the House, if Texas doesn't have the land, wouldn't it still just be sitting out there?
Well, they do have some land, and they definitely even have private landowners that have offered up their land. One of the other letters that I have written over a month ago was to Secretary Mayorkas, because it's my understanding that Texas actually gave over land under the Trump administration with the understanding that that land was going to be used to build a wall. If you're not going to build a wall, give the land back to Texas so that they can use that land to build it. But right now we're looking at over $100 million worth of materials that have been left there. We're spending over $3 million $100 a day to be able to babysit that material. It's turning to rust. It's doing no good. Allow Texas to have that, to be able to build the wall. If the U.S. government is not going to protect the state, allow the state to be able to protect itself. It's very frustrating that we have seen the open border policies that we've seen. We've seen the flooding of drugs, illegal activities, sex trafficking into our communities. Texas has to do this. And if the federal government, if this Biden administration had no problem leaving $85 billion worth of military equipment in Afghanistan to be able to arm the Taliban and terrorists over there, it should really have no problem at all giving Texas $100 million worth of equipment, which would build 100 miles worth of wall to be able to protect our nation.
Congresswoman, Thursday, the nation observed Veterans Day. You've also authored another bill called the Valor Earned, Not Stolen Act. It increases the penalty for people who falsify their service records, and I think raises it up to essentially the same crime as impersonating a public official. What was the genesis behind this bill?
We had read and we had seen a number of articles about it, and our office started getting some calls on it, so we started to research it. And we have focused on veterans in our community. We have a roundtable. We've got a committee focused on veterans. We've actually hired somebody to reach out. And we started seeing that there were examples of people who were pretending that they had gotten accommodations in order to get government funding, in order to get government grants. And we're having a hard enough time helping our vets that really need the help. And for other people who haven't earned it, to be able to just, lie about their record and be able to get those resources from others that truly deserve it, we thought was an injustice, and we wanted to make sure that we were focusing on that.
We'll be following that one. Congresswoman Van Duyn, we appreciate the time.
Thank you very much, Jason. It's great to see you.
Public school libraries are one of the new targets for Republicans running for office next year. A few weeks ago, State Rep Matt Krause, who's running for Attorney General, told us about a letter he sent to school districts inquiring about 800 plus books on the shelves. Governor Abbott now going even further. He wants new standards established to prevent pornography and obscene content in public school libraries. And Abbott is asking the Texas Education Agency to report any porn they find on campuses. Ian Mitra is in for Ross Ramsey this week. Ian is an editor at the Texas Tribune in Austin. Good morning to you, man.
Good morning.
This is already illegal, and this clearly plays well with Republican primary voters, but is this something that could backfire in a general election?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, it really kind of depends on how the debate goes. I think, really for the Republicans, there's a very clear, a rate of concern that's being brought up here, and a lot of the concerns about some of these books has been brought up in some cases by parents. And so they see this as a very clear, line to draw, although there's still a lot of context being lost in some of the discussions about these books.
Yeah, a lot indeed. The state's new abortion law is now being argued at the state district court level. How is this case different from what's going on at the U.S. Supreme Court right now?
Yeah, so I think what was being argued this week in front of a state district judge was the first time the constitutionality of the new abortion law was really at issue. I think on the Supreme Court level, the arguments were largely focused on kind of procedural technicalities, how the law was designed to enforce the abortion ban that's listed in Senate Bill 8. And so this is much more looking at the constitutionality of the law, whether it violates, the predetermined, that was been Roe v. Wade in 73. So I think that's more of the focus of what's going on the state level right now in state court.
All right, another case to watch. Ian, thanks. Back to you in a moment.
Thanks.
Coming up, Democrats in Houston just carved up brand new districts for the county commission, and Republicans are the ones calling it a power grab. So will the GOP there sue to stop it? Wait until you hear what Commissioner Jack Cagle said. And on the state level, Democrats are going to court this week, making another attempt to throw out new maps that the Republican legislature drew. State Senator Roland Gutierrez from San Antonio in a moment. And if you want to keep up with Texas politics during the week, you should subscribe to our podcast. It's called Y'all-itics. New content, fresh interviews, and episodes drop every Tuesday, wherever you get your podcasts. Welcome back to Inside Texas Politics. Now to Houston, where we are watching an interesting political drama play out. It is redistricting, not what the state legislature did this year. This is something that county commissioners just passed in Harris County. Democrats have a majority there, so they get to decide what the districts look like. But Republicans, they are the ones now protesting, calling this a power grab. The question this weekend, will Republicans take their fight to court over redistricting in Harris County? Jack Cagle is one of the two Republicans on the county commissioner's court there and spoke to us from Houston. Commissioner, welcome to our program. Let's start with a 30,000-foot view on this. People watching this will likely say, hey, we just saw the same thing play out at the state level. The Republicans are in charge of the legislature. They get to decide. In Harris County, Democrats are in charge of commissioner's court. They get to decide. What do you say to those folks?
Well, I think that they're comparing apples to oranges and apples to lemons. What went on in Austin was a little rough. There was some debate, there was some negotiation, but at the end of the day, there was compromise and things were worked out. At the end of the day, the nasty sausage making ended up with a final solution that I think resulted in no great disparities occurring. But the people in Austin and in Washington are policy makers. They are not service providers. When you are in a county, we're the ones who fix your potholes. We're the ones that clean out the drainage ditches. We're the ones that mow the side of the road. We're the ones that make sure that your bathrooms are clean in your parks and that we are constructing and maintaining those green spaces that are the connectors of your community. We provide the community centers. And so when you have a situation like this to where you didn't just tweak precincts, but you actually did a transmigration of 2.3 million people, you are impacting the potential ability for people to do services.
Commissioner, you sound obviously passionate about this, but at the end of the day, whomever represents this is going to take care of the service that is required, right?
Well, that's the blessing of Commissioner Ramsey and I, and that we have been working together to make sure that nobody's services are compromised. But we're moving Precinct 4 vehicles from one part of the county to another part of the county. We're moving Precinct 3 vehicles from one part of the county to another part of the county. Our employees are having to learn new territories. We're having to get to know new communities. We're having to start over from scratch.
Well, Commissioner, you proposed a map that creates, 3 Republican districts out of the 4 seats that are available. People are wondering, how in the world can you ask for that when Republicans haven't won a countywide election since 2014?
Well, that's a misnomer. It didn't prepare where 3 Republicans would win. If you actually look at the bottom numbers that we had prepared, what it did was it moved the fewest number of people possible from one precinct to another and kept services in mind. It still had where there would be 2 Republican and 2 Democrats. It just didn't increase the margin of Democrat lead significantly. And that's what the narrative is that my map somehow or another didn't guarantee that the current Democrat that is in that other office would be guaranteed by the numbers to be back in there.
Under the map that passed, though, one of the 2 Republican seats, Commissioner Ramsey's, would likely flip. Your precinct 4, would get larger. It would be solid Republican. If the budget comes along with this.
But let me back you up. The earlier proposed map was one that would make Precinct 4 largely Republican.
Right.
The one that was passed was dropped onto the public in short notice, like within a day or two. And that one actually reversed the 2 precincts and made the new 3, which is where Commissioner Ramsey is serving, roughly 60% Republican, and then the new 4 off to the west and to the south, which I'm making friends and I'm working hard to serve all the folks that are there. But that precinct is a Democrat opportunity precinct in which there are more people who have voted Democrat historically than there are Republican who have voted historically. The good news for me as a service-minded individual, though, is that this is not straight party voting, and that through hard work and service and the ability to get in there, I can persuade people to go, good service is more. There's not an R or a D on a pothole, and there's not an R or a D on a clean bathroom in a park. And if I can render good service, then people will vote according to the service that they are receiving, not according to the political affiliation of the individual that is rendering that service.
Commissioner, based on the map that passed, are you concerned that you will have trouble getting reelected?
I wouldn't phrase it that way. I got a challenge, but I'm ready for the challenge.
Let me ask you this. The big question that so many people have is, do you or Commissioner Ramsey plan to pursue any legal action over the maps that were passed in Harris County?
Stay tuned. You'll know that answer very shortly.
That sounds like a yes to me, Commissioner. We appreciate your time this morning. Thank you very much.
All right, bye.
Texas Democrats are not shy about their legal fight against the state's newly drawn districts. In fact, they're going to court in Travis County this week, asking judges there to throw out the state's newly drawn map because they argue it violates the state constitution. State Senator Roland Gutierrez is behind this challenge. We spoke to him briefly, a Democrat from San Antonio.
We'll be in the courthouse very soon, and I do believe that we're going to get the relief that that the law stipulates. Listen, it's a plain reading of the statute, and if you look at the constitutional language, it says you shall apportion after you get the data in the next regular session. Clear as day. Clear as day.
Yeah, and that's been the whole argument the entire time, is that the next regular session is coming up in 23. It's not a special session, right?
Well, this is what Republicans do acknowledge. They say, oh yeah, we're going to have to do it again in 23. I mean, this is what my Republican colleagues have told me. Oh, you're right, Roland. We're going to have to do it in 2023, but it just doesn't say that it's an exclusionary clause. In other words, it doesn't say shall only.
A case to watch there. Coming up, why is Louis Gohmert considering a challenge against his friend Ken Paxton? Why does Gohmert want to leave Congress anyway? And how grave of a threat could he pose to Paxton? We'll begin right there next on the Roundtable.
This is Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley.
Time now for Reporters Roundtable to put the headlines in perspective. Ian Mitra is back with us from Austin at the Texas Tribune. Bud Kennedy is here from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, and Bernadine Steptoe is a political producer at WFAA in Dallas. Ian, let's start with you and this word about Louis Gohmert saying that if he can raise $1 million in 10 days, he's going to run against Ken Paxton for the Republican nomination for Attorney General. These guys were friends. What's going on? What happened here? This was surprising to me. Was it you?
Surprising to hear about Louis Gohmert, yes, and it's quite a ambitious fundraising goal that he set out, and I think it'll be interesting to see what happens. But ultimately, Ken Paxton, despite all of the legal issues that we know about, I mean, he still has that Donald Trump endorsement, and that goes a long way.
Indeed so. And Bud, I saw a fundraiser coming up between Ken Paxton and Donald Trump. So Paxton's clearly trying to get ahead of this. What do you expect to happen? Do you expect Gohmert to actually run?
Well, that's the point. I mean, Gohmert wants to keep control of the Attorney General's office and keep control of elections for the future. That's his argument. But there's a fella down in Mar-a-Lago that could give $1 million anytime he wanted. He seems to still be backing Ken Paxton.
What do you expect to happen, Bud?
I do expect Gohmert to run. I do expect Gohmert to put some money together and put himself out there in the campaign, mainly because Matt Krause hasn't quite mustered as much of a challenge to Paxton as some on the right wing of the party would have wanted.
And Bernadine, you're raising your eyebrows about that. Let me ask you this, though. Why do you think Gohmert wants to leave Congress for as long as he's been there?
Because I don't think he has the power that he used to have, because keep in mind, he was part of the insurrection in a way, in the terms of trying to say that they needed to have some type of violence. So I don't think he has the power, and he's not getting anything done. But I'd be surprised. One thing that he has said, he needs to raise $10 million before he decides. I don't see that happening, because Paxton is raising money as well. So we'll see if he sticks to that word, but I just don't see him running. I could be wrong.
We shall see. We should know the answer in 10 days or so. Ian, let's ask about the other huge news on the other side of the aisle. This chatter about what Beto O'Rourke is going to do. Do you expect that he will run for governor?
Yeah, I think I think we should be able to expect him to run, and we should expect an announcement to come. I think it's very much been hinted at and teased at, and it's just a matter of when. So I think that is probably an announcement coming soon.
And Bud, this polls we've seen this week from the Texas Tribune, from the Texas Hispanic Policy Foundation, this month rather, not this week, but polls show this could be a competitive race, and there's a lot still to be discussed. What happens with Roe versus Wade at the Supreme Court, et cetera, right?
Well, but there is also a big shift in the Valley. We've seen the Valley votes shift to be redder now. Greg Abbott's always been strong in the Valley. Beto was very weak in the Valley. He only carried 2 counties in the Valley in the Democratic primary. Remember, even Democrats, only 60% of Democrats wanted him to be the nominee against Ted Cruz. He needs to get all the Democrats on his side. He didn't do that in 2018.
So considering that, Bernadine, is there a path to victory for him as it looks right now 1 year out?
Of course, because remember, he in the Tribune poll, he was 9 percentage points down. He had never declared. So now that he's going to declare, now he does have challenges. I'm not saying that he's a shoo-in by no means, but who else? And he needs to come on and declare if he's going to do it, because all the guessing and all of this that he's going to run, that's getting old. So he needs to come on, and everybody expects him to run.
It does get old, but it's good for us to talk about on Sunday mornings.
It does give us something to talk about.
Right. At the end of the day, though, I mean, the poll that you guys did, released a few days ago, showed that a majority of Texans the entire year think this state is on the wrong track. And the governor's approval rating, let's say he wins the primary, his approval rating is below 50% as well, too. He has challenges on his end.
That's true, and I think there's still, fallout. I mean, our polling showed like there's still a lot of unhappiness about how things were handled with the winter storm, and then certainly there's been a lot of criticism of things, including the pandemic and stuff. But ultimately, it's a matter of what people are going to be talking about in the fall when it comes to general election time about the results. And
we still have some time to go. Good deal, guys. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Thank you for watching as well. We're back again next Sunday to take you inside Texas politics, and hope you can join us then. Take care.